Hi everyone, thank you for attending this afternoon. My name is Julie Krupa. I'm an attorney with the Department of Procurement Services. On behalf of Jamie Rhee, our Chief Procurement Officer, and Mayor Manuel, I'd like to thank you for attending. Today we are going to talk about some of the city's workforce development incentives and programs. So the City of Chicago has numerous incentives and programs that we've developed to increase the number of skilled residents who are capable of working in growing industries. The reason we do this is because one of our biggest priorities is to ensure the disadvantaged populations as well as the city's youth have opportunities and access to employment. So this workshop is going to cover the Chicago Residency Ordinance as well as our local hiring requirements. And I'm also going to briefly touch on a few of our incentives that we have, including the ex-offender apprentice program as well as the apprenticeship bid incentive. Additionally, information about the programs through the Department of Family and Support Services as well as the Chicago Workforce Partnership will be made available. So I'm going to dive into our programs and bid incentives. As I mentioned, my name is Julie Krupa. I'm an attorney with the department. Terry is unable to join us today. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is our residency requirements on our construction contracts. So the Chicago Residency Ordinance requires on contracts that are with an estimated value of $100,000 or more that at least 50% of the labor hours be performed by Chicago area residents. So this is important because this increases the opportunities for local Chicago residents to be part of the workforce on Chicago projects. So we're increasing the local workforce and we're increasing the wages that are paid to local workforce through this. There's also the Project Area Resident Ordinance under 292-330 of the Municipal Code. This requires on those same construction contracts with the estimated value of $100,000 or more that 7.5% or more of the labor hours on that project be performed by project area residents. So in the bid package for the construction project, we will submit a map that shows what the project areas are. So that is where you need to identify residents of that project area that those hours have to be performed by. And this is something that we monitor throughout the contract performance to ensure compliance.
How is that monitored? Is that through
payroll
or the B2G or LC?
Sure. The question that we asked was how that was monitored. So all of our contractors are required to submit certified payrolls and additional documentation as requested by the city, and we will monitor that and track who's being paid, their addresses to ensure that they're part of the areas that required, that they're Chicago ordinances or, Chicago residents or project area residents. So I'm going to discuss some of our incentives that we have. The first incentive we have is our local business preference ordinance. So this incentive there's a three-part to it. So it expands, it rewards, organizations in the city that employ city residents, especially socioeconomically disadvantaged areas of the city. So there's three different levels. There's the 2%, the 4%, and the 6% incentive. Now these three are not incentives you can use all together. You will be eligible for one of the three. To break it down, the 2% incentive is available to firms that conduct their day-to-day business in the city of Chicago, which is the place of employment for the majority of its regular full-time employees. So if you meet that, so if you have your place of business in the city and the majority of your workforce is employed at that office, you can be eligible to apply for the 2% bid incentive. Now, if in addition to that, more than 50% of the non-labor employees are city residents, you are eligible for the 4% incentive. And if in addition to that, the majority of city non-resident hour employees reside in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas in the city, you're eligible for the 6% incentive.
So that's deducted off of the bid amount?
Yes. So the question was whether that means it's deducted off the bid amount, and that's exactly correct. What the incentive does, it's an artificial reduction in your bid price. So when your bid is evaluated, we'll reduce it by either 2%, 4%, or 6% if you're eligible for this incentive, solely for the purpose of evaluation. If you're awarded the contract, your contract award will be in the amount of your bid before the incentives were removed. Another of our incentives is tied to equal employment opportunity. So we've raised the maximum commitment to utilize minority and female journey workers, apprentices, and laborers on our construction contracts. The maximum percentages allowed are 15% for female workers, this is up from 10%, and 70% for minority workers, which is up from 50%. Also, contractors can receive 150% credit towards their commitment for each labor hour worked by employees from socioeconomically disadvantaged areas. So this bid preference is based on a formula. In the bid package, you'll see you will be able to list all of the different labor hours that you're committing for minority and women journey workers, apprentices, and laborers. And based on that, we will come up with an award criteria figure. So then your bid will be reduced based on what your commitments are. So again, this is a preference or an incentive that doesn't affect what your contract award is. It's purely for evaluation purposes. And it's a way that we can encourage the use of women and minority journey workers, laborers, and apprentices. Another one of our incentives for construction projects that has recently been updated is our apprentice utilization incentive. Previously, this was an earned credit incentive, meaning if you met the requirements, you could earn an incentive to use on future projects. We've changed this program now so that you can receive a bid incentive on the project you're applying for. So how this works is you will commit to having a certain number of labor hours, certain percentage of labor hours to be performed by eligible apprentices. And these have to be apprentices that are enrolled in or graduated from a construction technology training program administered by city colleges, or they have to be a graduate of CPS. So if you commit to 5 to 10% of the labor hours being performed by this type of apprentices, you are eligible for an incentive of 0.5%. 11 to 15% of the total labor hours means that you're eligible for an incentive of 1%. So, sorry, we didn't update the chart on the slide. It says future bid incentive, but in actuality, it is a current incentive, so you'll receive the incentive on the contract you're applying for. Now, it's important to keep in mind that we want you to commit to using apprentices from these categories, but we also want to make sure that you're actually complying with it. So during the contract, we do monitor and ensure that our contractors are complying and meeting the requirements, and there are penalties associated if you fail to meet your commitments. So, as I mentioned, this is up to 1% incentive, and it's graduates from a city college's construction technical training program or graduates of CPS. The next incentive has also been recently updated, like the apprenticeship incentive. This was previously a future incentive where you could earn credit on a future project, but now the ex-offender apprenticeship program has been changed so you can earn credit on the contract you're applying for. Earn the incentive on the contract you're applying for. So this is up to 1% on your contract. So it was, again, artificial reduction in your price purely for evaluation purposes. And in order to earn it, you have to commit to sponsoring into an apprenticeship program certain ex-offenders. And the Department of Family and Support Services works with our delegate agencies to recruit, screen, and refer potential qualified candidates. All candidates have to go through an initial intake process, so their eligibility will be determined through the program. For this, if you commit to 5 to 10% of the labor hours being performed by eligible ex-offender apprentices, you can earn an incentive of 0.5%. If you commit to 11 to 15% labor hours, you can earn a 1% incentive.
So the contractor can go to these delegated agencies to recruit
Yes.
candidates that have already been screened and...
Exactly. And the question was whether contractors can go to these agencies to find candidates for this program who have already been screened. And that's how this program would work. You would work with the delegate agencies to find potential apprentices that then you would use as apprentices on your project, and you would commit to a certain number of labor hours to be performed by those apprentices. And like I mentioned with the previous incentive, we do want to make sure that our contractors are complying with the requirements. So if they've committed to a certain percentage of labor hours, we need to make sure that if a contractor has received an incentive and a reduction of their price for evaluation purposes, that they're actually meeting that commitment and they're actually honoring their commitment to employ certain ex-offender apprentices. There's a lot of...
There's not a requirement, though, like your minority and female apprentices and laborers. The ex-offender is purely an incentive at this point.
Yeah, so the question was whether these are optional or required programs, and these are all optional. They're incentives that are available for contractors who want to exercise them and apply for them, but they're not a requirement. The only requirements on your contract will be NBE or WBE goals, and there are certain residency requirements and project area requirements. Otherwise, any of these incentives are available if you so choose to commit to them. So these are just a brief overview of some of our incentives that are related to workforce development. We have many other incentives and programs that are available to city contractors. I encourage you to check out DPS's website for additional information about all of our regulations associated with those rules. We also have the bid incentives and programs guide, which we can provide anyone in attendance a copy with. It's also available on our website. This is a user-friendly guide that lists all of our incentives, how you apply, what the eligibility requirements are, which incentives you can combine together, which are not allowed to be combined together. So it's a great resource, and I encourage you to check it out. If you have any questions for me about what I've covered, I can give you my email address, so you can feel free to reach out to me. It's Julie, my first name, Julie, .Krupa, which is my last name, Krupa, the number 2, at cityofchicago.org. So that's julie.krupa2 at cityofchicago.org. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over.
Hello, I'm Ray Bentley. I'm the Chief Community Officer for the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. The partnership is primarily funded through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It's the federal legislation that provides for workforce services throughout the nation. We also have a number of other funding sources as well. As I'll explain, we're the nation's second largest local workforce development area. And we're a nonprofit administrative agency. We became a nonprofit in 2012 when Mayor Rahm Emanuel and County Board President Tony Preckwinkle merged their workforce agencies into one agency and created a nonprofit. As a result of being a nonprofit, we've been able to leverage that relationship into a number of other funding resources outside of government. So it's added a lot of dimension to what we do in terms of work. We oversee a network of 53 delegate agencies, and as a result, we have over 10 one-stop centers located throughout Chicago and Cook County. A one-stop center is a full-service center where somebody who's seeking a job or somebody who's looking for employees can come and get their needs met. We have 8 satellite centers and 3 sector centers. A sector center, we have 3, healthcare, information technology, and hospitality and retail. A sector center is a business-focused workforce location that provides services to employers throughout Chicago and Cook County. For example, the Hospitality and Retail Sector Center provides job sourcing for the hotel industry, the restaurant industry, and the retail industry here in Chicago and Cook County. We recently held an event where we had over 60 employers at one event who are actively recruiting for talent as we enter the tourism season. We've placed nearly 40,000 people into jobs since we became the partnership. We serve 140,000 people on average per year. We also have vocational training opportunities. So if someone comes to us and they're not really prepared to go into the workforce, we can help train them through vocational training. It's free of charge to the individual. We fund it through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. So we can issue a grant for that individual up to $8,000 to go to school and learn a valuable skill. We train numbers of truck drivers and people in the medical field on a regular basis.
So an individual can get up to $8,000 worth of training if what type of criteria would they need to meet?
So the question was, can an individual receive this training up to $8,000? The answer is yes. The criteria is that they have to be eligible under the national guidelines under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. In other words, they have to be eligible based on income, or they have to be eligible based on being dislocated from their last position. So we've got criteria that individuals have to meet in order to become eligible, but if they're deemed eligible for the program, they can qualify for grants in order to return to school.
And does the partnership help find a place for them to get that training?
We actually have certified trainers throughout Chicago and Cook County who've gone through a process to qualify as WIOA qualified trainers. And so they submit an application, they're vetted, we have criteria in place in terms of the training criteria, the curriculum itself, and also we want to make sure that they have some investment in the workforce system, that they actually have employers that they have a relationship with to make sure, number one, that the curricula is up to date, and number two, that they can actually place people after the training takes place. We have an approximately a $62 million budget, although that continues to go up as we receive additional resources outside of government resources. And over the last 3 years, we've leveraged about $40 million in outside funding. That's not part of our formula grant that we receive from the federal government. Our vision is to help make sure that every person has the opportunity to build a career, and that every business has the talent to grow and compete in a global economy. Our mission kind of follows along with those same lines: to create, promote, and effectively manage a network of workforce development organizations that design innovative solutions for businesses and that prepare individuals for and connect them to career opportunities. You notice I didn't say jobs. We're really trying to focus on careers as part of our mission. Some of that work takes place because we have an entire system. So on the employer side, we actually have a group of people that support employers, and they actually help them to make sure to post their job descriptions. We turn those job descriptions into job orders, and then we actually go out and recruit from a labor pool that's got to be at least, at any given point in time, 12 to 15,000 people in the labor pool. So many of them come from being dislocated workers. So these may be people who file for unemployment insurance, who are actually working and have come to find another job, or people who haven't been in the workplace. We have a number of people who graduate high school, graduate from colleges, have been disconnected from work for some time. We also help that population as well. At this point in time, we have over 5.6 million youth in this country who are not connected to either work or education. So we're working with that population to help them. There are a number of people who are 50 years old or older who've been disconnected from work as well, particularly during the recession. So we're also making sure that they are prepared to go in front of employers. We help recruit employers and make sure that people get to work. On the job seeker side, there's a lot of work sometimes that has to be done. We will make sure, number one, they have a good resume. Number two, that they're comfortable sitting in front of an employer and interviewing. And that they kind of really assess what it is they're bringing to the table for employers, because oftentimes if you've been working on a job for 20 years, you really don't know what it is you bring to the table in terms of an employer. And even if you knew it, it's kind of hard to explain. So we want to make sure that people are comfortable with their skill sets. In some cases, they may have to change careers because the place they were working before, maybe it's the business is waning. It's not what it used to be. So we want to make sure that our candidates are prepared and they understand what they can do for employers, and that they have opportunities to present themselves in front of employers. So we do a lot of work with individuals to make sure they're prepared to sit in front of employers and qualify for jobs. And in cases where their skill set may be obsolete, we want to help them get that additional vocational training I talked about earlier. So see, these are some of the things that we help employers with: technical assistance, employer development services, and talent acquisition. In terms of technical assistance, that might be employers may need some help figuring out, is their wage competitive? Do they have a good quality job description? Do they meet current federal regulations and sometimes state and local regulations? For instance, there could be some ADA requirements that they may not know that they have to meet. So we can help them figure out how to make sure they're compliant with any particular regulations, whether it's federal, state, or local. Make sure that their job description meets their requirements. Make sure that they have a competitive wage, because we actually do research on wages. In terms of employer development services, we can make sure that they have an opportunity to present themselves to labor pools. So different employers have different ways that they do this. Some may want to do all the interviewing themselves, but they may just need the venue and may need the labor pool to be in front of them so they can present their opportunity and then screen for candidates. Others may want you to do the screening for them. We're capable of customizing the approach that we use to provide employers with services. And talent acquisition, making sure that we get the right people in front of employers, because oftentimes if you put out a notice through some of the other vehicles like on the web, you may get a flood of resumes, but they may not match up with the particular opportunity that you're recruiting for. We help to make sure the right candidates are in front of the employer, which saves time and money. One example is Marianas. We helped Marianas to recruit. We used 49 of our delegate agencies. We used our 10 high-volume workforce centers and our satellite centers. We screened down from roughly 3,500 people who were pre-screened, and they hired 1,500 people to staff their new stores as they were opening new stores back in 2012, 2013. We would also do research, and we've identified the key industries in the Chicagoland region that we consider to be growth industries. In other words, this is where the jobs lie. And oftentimes what we don't want to see people do is try to go after jobs in businesses or industries where the opportunity is limited. We believe that if you pursue where the growth is, then you also have a career opportunity, because they have demands, they have needs that can be met through your ongoing growth. So the industries we identified were business and professional services. That's your banking, insurance, oftentimes your other financial institutions, healthcare, hospitality, and culinary. 55 million people will visit Chicago this year alone, and they will spend a lot of money here in Chicago. Retail, information technology. Now, information technology is an industry that goes across industries. So you may find an IT firm, or you may find IT embedded in a healthcare firm. It presents all kinds of opportunities for people. Manufacturing and transportation, distribution, and logistics. Because of our location, we're a central point in terms of highways, railroads, even shipping, and a lot of products have to come our way to make its way through the rest of the nation. We also prepare special reports to help people to understand how to navigate today's workforce. For instance, the one that you're looking at now is called, it's actually a career pathways chart. And it shows entry-level positions all the way through to advanced level positions, the pay amounts that are required for those positions, and the skill sets that are required as well. We have what's called a targeted occupational profile. We share this with our customers. And this document actually shows the working conditions, the salaries and wages, and the skill sets required for a particular job. In this case, you may not be able to read it, but this is for a physical therapy aide and an assistant. And it even gives the names of vocational training providers here in the Chicagoland area that provide this kind of training. So these are reports that I can provide to people upon request. And I'll give you my phone number before we finish in case you have any interest in any particular reports. And here's what we call the Where Are the Jobs report. We generate this report every single quarter. We identify where all of the jobs are in Cook County. On this report, I think we identified about 160,000 jobs, who the top employers are in Cook County, and what the top job titles are, the skill sets that are required for that, and any workplace credentials that go along with that job. A workplace credential might be, for example, a truck driver has to have a commercial driver's license. In order to operate in that field, they have to have that license in order to drive. So we can help people get those credentials. This report identifies what credentials are beneficial to which industries and which occupations. In terms of how we spend our training funds, we did the labor market research. We came up with those 7 targeted industries I shared with you earlier. We've identified 40 top occupations that plug into those 7 industries where the jobs are. Now, some things that we can do for employers is if an employer has a need and they're interviewing people for that need, and the need's not being met because maybe the skill set required is a little unique, or it's being met maybe 75% of the way, but there's 25% skill gap that it needs to be closed, we can offer what's called on-the-job training subsidies. These subsidies allow the employer to receive a subsidized amount of money to train the individual up to meet their standards. So in other words, if the individual has a gap in skills, and the employer has someone maybe they can partner with that person or have as a mentor, or they may want to send them to a class training, or they have some other way that they can address that skills gap, we can actually pay a subsidy for that individual to receive that training. And these can last up to 6 months. I can provide more details upon request, but it's a very useful tool, particularly for organizations that are struggling with meeting their hiring needs, their human talent needs. These are some of the specifics. The program has to operate around the year. It reduces employee turnover. It pays an hourly wage or salary equal to the minimum wage and employs numerous workers with the same or similar functions. So it's ideal for these kinds of businesses. And if you have any questions, my telephone number is, my name is Ray Bentley, that's R-A-Y, then Bentley, B-E-N-T-L-E-Y. And my phone number is 312-603-0224. And we also have a lot of information on our website, which is at www.workforceboard, it's B-O-A-R-D, .org, O-R-G. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'll stick around until the end of the presentation in case you have any questions for me. Thank you.
What was the last word of your website? www.workforceboard.
Board, that's a B-O-A-R-D .org.
And unfortunately, Mr. Juan Cruz is unavailable, or he's unable to attend today's workshop, but we're going to move forward and go ahead and go through his slides, and I'm going to share his information with you if you have any questions at the end. His name is Juan Cruz, and his phone number is 312-746-7760, and his email is Juan, Juan, Cruz, C-R-U-Z, at cityofchicago.org. The phone number is 312-746-7760. Okay, so the mission of the Department of Family and Support Services is working with community partners in Chicago residents and family to build stability, support well-being, and empower them to thrive. The Department of Family and Support Services is considered the largest social service program provider in Chicago. We're going to go over into detail under each one of these buckets on the next slide, but these are the different program divisions that the Department of Family and Support Services has. So the Children's Services, Youth Services, Domestic Violence Services, Workforce, Homeless, Senior, and Community Service Centers. The Department, DFSS invests over $300,000 serving 300,000 Chicago's residents. So this is a little bit of what each service division does. The Children's Services has the Early Head Start program, the Child Care program. It's a pretty large multi-service organization, and it has local daycare sites. The Youth Services programs is what is the out-of-school programs, the One Summertime in Chicago, the Justice programs involving the youth. And the way that that's done, or the way that that program is run, is through employers and mentoring providers. The Domestic Violence Services is what the 24/7 hotline that they have, and the legal advocacy teams. And that is provided through the legal aid clinics and counseling providers. The Workforce Services, that's the job preparation, the training, and the placement done through community reentry support centers, and that's through the workforce centers and the delegate agencies, as discussed previously earlier in the presentation. The Homeless Services, that's emergency rental assistance, employment, education, and legal assistance. The way that's done is through homeless shelters, case management, and outreach from DFSS. Senior Services, that's what is the Meals on Wheels, the housing assistance, and the in-home care. The way that that's done is through DFSS employees at the senior centers, as well as the delegate agencies. The community service is the case management and the referrals of all the services, and that's done through the staff of the DFSS employees. So how is DFSS involved? DFSS is, the involvement is done through contracted delegate agencies. So the delegate agencies are private and community-based organizations, and these agencies provide employment services, helping people prepare for and find jobs, connecting them to the different career services, and access to different resources. Specifically, DFSS provides job training for high-need populations, including formerly incarcerated individuals, homeless individuals, and persons with limited English proficiency. This is done through transitional job programs, skill training in high-demand industries, and through more advanced education and training programs. So that's kind of what DFSS does in assisting ex-offenders. So how does a capacity meet the needs of the employer? So within the last year, through the partner agencies, DFSS has serviced over 1,000 people with approximately 600 obtaining employment. They were also able to have 14,000 people come through the community reentry support centers. And out of 48 delegate agencies, 14 work specific with the ex-offenders. So this is a really good way for the DFSS Reentry Support Center to have these different locations and be that hub for those employers and employees. And this is this is the 4 different locations of where you can find the community reentry support centers for the Department of Family and Support Services. There's one, there's in Inglewood, West Side, further on the South Side, and north on the Howard side of the city. Once again, I'll share Juan's information. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here, so I apologize for that. But his number, again, for those listening to us online, is 312-744-7760. And the email to Juan Cruz, who is the Work Services Coordinator, is juan.cruz, C-R-U-Z, at cityofchicago.org. And we'll go ahead and open the forum to questions and answers. We do want to let you know to please go ahead and follow us on social media, not just the Department of Family and Support Services, DPS, and Chicago Cook Workforce. We offer a lot of information through our social media. We're very active. All of our upcoming workshops and events, we ensure to provide that information to the community. Does anyone have any other questions while we're here? Okay, great. Well, thank you guys for attending today, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.